Welcome back to the API Masterclass series. In the last video, we did a deep dive into CRUD operations with MongoDB. We covered how to create, read, update, and delete data using MongoDB. In case if you missed it, I'll leave a link in the description so that you can see that video. Now, today, what we are going to do, we are shifting our gears into Redis. So, what is Redis? So, basically, it is an in-memory database. What it will do, it will help us in doing performance optimization. So, here we will learn how to install Redis, how to configure Redis in our project, and how to kind of basically do CRUD operation on Redis. So, if we have data in the Redis, we will serve the data from the Redis instead of going to the database. But if the data doesn't exist in the Redis, we will query the database, store the data in the Redis, and then send it back to the client. So this is the pattern that we are going to follow in this video. So to set up Redis, what approach we will take? It will be same as the MongoDB, right? So we will set it up in our Docker Compose, right? So for that, what I will add? So I will add another service parallel to this Mongo service, and very simple, I will name it as Redis. Then what image it will pick? It will pick the Redis latest image. Then I will do the port mapping. So what port it will map to? It will map to 6379 colon 6379. I will save this one, and I will, in one terminal the server is running, and in another terminal I will run the Docker. So for that, what I will do, Docker compose up. So it will now create two instances, one is the MongoDB and one is our Redis image, right? So if you see the Redis logs and then MongoDB logs, right? So our Redis setup is done. Now, just like to work with MongoDB, we installed a package called Mongoose. Now, in order to work with Redis, what we will do, we will install another package called as IO Redis. So if you see here, I will take another terminal because the other two terminals are occupied, right? So what I will do, npm install IO Redis, and I will press enter. So it has installed. How would I know if it is installed or not installed? I will go and check the package JSON. So if you see here in the dependency, there is an entry called IO Redis with a particular version number. Right now, this being done, what we will do? We will write a function to connect to the Redis instance. So here in config, I have a db.js. Now in the same line, I will create another file called redis.js. Then what I can do, I will import Redis from IO Redis. Then const, I'll say, I'll create a client, Redis client equals to new Redis, and this will take a configuration object. Then what I can do, I will export this one. So what I will do, I will export this one, export default Redis client. Now what configuration value we have to send? We have to add the host and port. Now from where we will get the host and port? Of course we have to set it in the environment variable. So for this, what I will do, I will come here I will say Redis host, which is nothing but it is running on localhost, then Redis port, and its value is 6379, which is coming from our Docker Compose, right? So I will copy this one and I will add it here. Okay, now I will come back to this redis.js. Here it will take two properties. One is the host, right, which value is process.env.redis host, Then what other value it will take? Port. So what will be the value of the port? So it will be process.env.redis and port. Then we will add a small error handler. So I will say redis.on. So this is an event. What is the event type? On error. So if it encounters any error, it will trigger this function. Here what I will do, I will just do a console.log redis error, and what I can do, error dot message. Then now if you remember, in db.js in catch block I did process.exit. Now should I do the same thing on redis error? The answer is no, because my application can still run even without redis, but of course it will be little slow in performance, but that's not the reason I want to stop the whole application. If it was the database, then there is no point in running the application, because the application majority of data it is taking from database, right? All the business data is stored in the database. So if database connection doesn't happen, then it's okay to close your API. But when it comes to the Redis client, it's not as important as the database instance. Of course, without the Redis, our API response will be slow, but our app can still run. So for this reason, I am not going to do a process.exit if there is an error on the Redis client, right? Now I will add the kind of CRUD functionality for this Redis. So there are three methods: get, set and delete, right? So for that, what I will do, I will write a function, and then that I will start using in my service layer. So what is the best place to write the function? So here I will create another folder. I will call it as lib or libraries, right? Here we will store different helper functions. Here what I will do, I will create a file called redis helper.js. Here what I have to do, I will first import Redis client, right, from config redis.js. Then I will first export a method, export const get data from Redis, right? And this will be an async function. And what parameter it will take? It will take a key, right? Based on which key it will get us the data, right? So Redis is basically a key value pair store. So when getting the data, we will send a key, it will send us the data. Then so I will say const cached data equals to await Redis client dot get key, right? So this is the get method. Now the thing is, this data is stored in string format. So for this reason, before I do a return, what I have to do, I'll do json.parse, then cached data, right? And this value I will return. Then we will write the set method, export const set data to Redis. Then this will be an async key, right? And it will take three parameters. One is the key, one is the data, and one is the cache duration, right? Now what is this cache duration? That means how long the data should be stored in the Redis. After this duration, the data will be automatically removed, and after this we will do the database call to reset the data in the Redis. What I can do, I will say await Redis client dot set x, then key, then cache duration, then I will say json dot stringify data, right? So if you remember, we were doing json dot parse to parse the data stored in string, right? So now here we are storing the data as a string format. Then what I can do, as such it won't return anything, so I'll say just empty return. Then I will say export const, and I will name this function as invalidate key, right? That means there are two ways I can delete the data. First one is by doing a force invalidation. Second one is of course when the cache duration ends. So here there are a few scenarios in which I want to manually delete the data or technically invalidate the data. So in that case, what I will do, I will call this invalidate key function, right? This will be an async function. So I will say key, and then await Redis client dot delete key, right? So I will forcefully delete it. I will not wait for this cache duration to complete so that the data will be deleted. I am going to programmatically delete the data. That means I will invalidate the key, right? So these are the helper functions, right? So if we go and check our node server, it is running fine. Now let us go to our service and in the participant service. Here what we are doing, here in get participant we are getting data from the participant ID. This method get single data by participant ID, that is coming from repository. The repository is one data source. Now before going to the repository, here we will do a validation if this data exists in the database or not. If it doesn't exist, then we will go to the database, get the data, store that data in the Redis and pass it to the client. So for that, what we will do, let us import all the methods from the Redis helper. So import something from dot slash lib slash Redis helper .js. So here what methods we have, get data from Redis, set data from Redis, and invalidate key. Now after this, what I will do, I will declare two constant. One is your Redis key, right? So based on what key the Redis value will be set. So I am declaring it as a global constant in the participant service. So I will say participants, right? And what will be the cache duration? So I will say Redis cache, right? And this value I am setting it to 3600 seconds, that means 1 hour. Okay, then I will update the get participants. So first what I will do, const result from Redis equals to await get data from Redis, and what data we will fetch? We will fetch the data in the Redis key, that is, as the key is here participants. So if we found the result from Redis, then we will just add a console log saying that found data from Redis, and if you want you can add the key just for reference, like from which key it has found the data. And here we are returning this value, so I will copy this one and I will add it here, and instead of result, what we will return? We will return result from cache. And after this I will say return if this if condition is not true. That means if we could not find any data from the Redis, then what we will do? We will come here, we will go to the repository, that means it will go to the database and it will fetch us the result. Then here what I will do, I will say console.log getting data from database. Since this data doesn't exist in Redis, I will set this data into the Redis so that next time when somebody calls this method, instead of again going to the repository, we can directly serve the data from the Redis cache. So I will say await set data to Redis. So first value is your Redis key. So if you see here, first is key, then data, then cache duration. So this is the key. What is the data? Result. And what is the duration? Redis cache. This value holds the duration. So here I have added the Redis configuration. Now let us go to the Postman and see how it is behaving. We will open the get all participants API. Here now if I do get all participants, just keep an eye on this console. So as soon as I click on this send, it will say getting data from database. So this data is coming from database query. Then when I run this query again, if you see, found data from Redis participants. This is the key name that we have added, right? So this time data is coming from your Redis instead of querying the database, right? So in get all participant, we have hooked up the Redis. Let us move to next method, that is get participant by ID. Now what we have to do here in get participant by ID? First thing that we have to do is to check if the data exists in database. Now which data we will check? We will check all the data, because as such we are not storing the data based on this participant ID. So we are storing the data as an array based on this participant's key. So this is the key, and corresponding to this we have all the objects of the participants. So I cannot query the Redis based on a particular participant ID. So for that, what I have to do? I have to query all the data and from there filter the participant ID that I want. Here also I will say if result from Redis, then what value we will return? We will do the same console log here, right? Then I will say const participant equals to result from Redis dot find. So I will run a find method. So I will say result, and this will be an anonymous arrow function. So result dot id triple equals to which id? This params id. So then what I will do? I will cut and move it above this line. So there I will get the id. So if I find a participant that matches this id, then what we will do? We will return the result. So I will copy this one, paste it here, and what value I will return? I will return participants. And if this if condition is not true, that means if the data is not found from the Redis, then what I will do? I will go to the database, and here I will try to do the query. I might find, I might not find it, right? So what I will do? I will add a console log, right? Here it says finding data from the database. Then if it finds anything, it will return. If it couldn't find anything, we will get a 404 not found error. So now get participant by ID and get single participant by ID. So the Redis setup for this is done, right? Then what we have to do? Now I will show you one interesting problem. Okay, now here I am doing get participants. So if I run this one, I will get one value. I will get one value. Now if I go and create another participant, right? So I will send this value. So another participant is created. So ideally there should be two participants. Now if I run this value, I am still getting only one participant, right? Now why? Because this data I am getting it from the cached data, right? So when I am trying to do any update, create or delete, what I have to do? I have to invalidate the cache, right? So for this, what I will do? I will come to participants. Here in create participant, after the participant is created, after this line, what I will say? Await, then invalidate key, this Redis key, right?
Now if I go to the create participant and now try to create third participant, I will send this one. Now what has happened? The key has got invalidated after the participant was created. Now if I go to the get function or get all participants, now if I do a run on this API, right, what will happen? Now I will get 3 participants, right? Why? Because the Redis key got deleted and it will fetch fresh data from the database, right? Now if I send it again, it will say found data from Redis. So when we are doing create, update or delete, we have to make sure that we are invalidating the cache. So for this, what I will do, I will come here, I will say invalidate key, copy this one, and in update participant here also, just before doing the response, I will say invalidate the key, and here also in the delete function I have to do invalidation, right? Then only it will be able to fetch the fresh data after a create, update or delete event has happened. Otherwise we will get the old data. So this is all about setting up Redis in our MongoDB CRUD environment.